Hello and welcome to the very first installment of season 2 of the L&D Fix, hosted of course by our friends at Thirst. Hello, it's me, it's Tom again. Sorry, back for season 2. Better luck next time in season 3. But on a happier note, maybe, we have joining us for this dive into compliance training, everyone's favourite topic, the wonderful Kara North and Jonathan Rock. Thank you both for joining us.
Good to be here, man.
Yeah, excited.
Indeed. So, as mentioned, this session is all about everyone's favourite topic, compliance training, specifically how to start making it everyone's favourite topic. Now, hopefully, it will not come as a surprise to any of you. I love compliance training. I think it is the single biggest opportunity we have as L&D professionals to show consistent and meaningful impact in the organisations that we work with, whether we're external partners or working within the business. I do, however, think we've kind of made a mess of it for quite a long time. Now, not everyone. There will be those of you go, no, I run amazing compliance training. You might even be right. But I know I have been guilty of creating some absolutely atrocious pieces of compliance content in my career, largely because that's the way we were always taught to do it. So the idea of this session is to explore what the opportunities are, how we can make this something that we're proud of rather than kind of going, oh yeah, and we do the compliance training bit, and how we can make it as effective, efficient, and impactful as possible. Luckily, none of that relies on me. We brought some guests. So, Kara, can we start with you?
You say that, Tom. Let me just interrupt you right there. If you guys are not part of Tom's Substack, he has been killing it lately. He has a string of really amazing articles about this very topic lately. I feel like I should be the host and you should be the guest with the amount of like just absolute gold you've been dropping in my feed. So please don't sell yourself short, man.
Well, there we go. I will send J-Rock his check in the post later. And thank you ever so much. So, Kara, could we start with you? Could you tell us a little bit about kind of you, first of all, for anyone who maybe hasn't heard of you before, and then tell us a little bit about your relationship with compliance training and how it's been part of your career.
Sure. So, hi, everybody. I'm Kara, like Kara, a lot about you. Easy way to remember how to pronounce my name. I am based in the United States, specifically Columbus, Ohio, and I've been in learning and development pretty much my entire career. I've been in multiple sectors from corporate. I've spent some time in higher education. I've been an independent consultant. And I've just kind of done a bunch of different industries from e-commerce to health care to health insurance to financial services. So kind of running the gamut. So when you talk about compliance training, I do think that there's a distinction, and I'm sure we'll probably get into this a little bit, of you as a consultant or external vendor versus being an internal consultant. And I think that those are two really distinct paths and two kind of prickly paths to go down, depending on how you do it. And Tom, I completely agree. You can go back in my career, and there are some definitely compliance skeletons in my closet, so to speak. But I will say that I think I have evolved with the way that I approach compliance training. And I'm going to use an analogy that is so hot right now, and pun intended. I think of compliance almost like corporate hot sauce. If you do it right, it makes the whole meal memorable, it elevates it. But done wrong, it really scorches trust and just leaves people not happy. So hopefully we can dive a little bit more into that, but have done probably hundreds of compliance courses in my career. But I'm really excited to hear what J-Rock has to say about it.
Oh man, how do I follow that up? That was an amazing simile, metaphor, word goody. I don't know what you call it. So my name is Jonathan Rock. Most people call me J-Rock, and it's Kara's fault that they call me that. She was like the one that started that a while ago. And if she hangs a name on you, boy, that sucker sticks. I'm here to tell you. I probably should have put J-Rock as my name down here. I work at an animal health pharmaceutical company, and compliance is like the reason I have a job, right? Like we get audited by the Food and Drug Administration from the United States and the European Medicines Association, and basically any country where we sell products and we do for all kinds of animals, petables and edibles, right? Cattle and companion animals. And so I'm the one that has to answer the questions when we go into the audit and they say, prove to me that the people working here are qualified to be making these products, that you didn't just let anyone off the street come in and just start working on stuff that has product impact, right? And so mainly the compliance training that I've been responsible for has been GMP, good manufacturing practices, which means that even though I'm a learning guy, I report to a bunch of chemists, right? So it's kind of awkward. Like they don't always know what I do or how I do it or why I do it. The other thing is there's a lot of EHS training, environmental health and safety. So environment is how you protect the world we're in. Health is how do you protect the people that are working there. And GMP is how do we protect the customers, who are usually people because dogs don't buy anything, and the consumers, which are the animals that take our products. And it's so my main one is the Code of Federal Regulations for the FDA and the UDRELEX, or the Orange Book for the European Medicine Association. And the three main areas where I hit are NEO, New Employee Orientation, for those that would never deign to put gravy on a biscuit. That's also known as induction. And I have annual refreshers that I have to do. And then anytime they find something wrong, there's an investigation, there's a deviation. We have something called a CAPA, a corrective and preventive action. And man, I'm probably preaching to the choir on this one, but y'all know how often people love to say, oh, it's a training issue, as a solution for every problem that comes along. So that's a little bit about me and how I got into this crazy. I love compliance training because it means I keep sticking around and getting paid.
And that touches on an interesting point of if everyone, the vast majority of people I speak to when I go into businesses, no one goes, yay, compliance, I get to do compliance training. But if it did disappear tomorrow, I suspect our industry would look a lot leaner than it does today, because it encapsulates a heck of a lot of the work that we do. So I guess on that note, let's go in reverse order, and J-Rock, we'll start with you. When a request comes in for some form of compliance training, and you can maybe pick what type of request you're receiving in this situation, what does your process look like?
So usually the requests I get are the last example I shared, the corrective and preventive actions. Somebody has done something that did not follow the SOP, or some product has come out that's outside the boundaries of good specification. And so they do an investigation. They come up with a root cause and they say, all right, we need you to do a training on such and such, right? So I can tell you how it started and how it's going, right? I can tell you how it was in the beginning when I was just starting off, which I think maybe some people will be able to relate to, and how it should have been. So how it started was I was an order taker, right? They would just come in and say, we need you to create a course on this. Here's your source material. Here's your SME. And I would just crank it out quick and inflict it upon everybody. So everyone, I believe, in this industry has one of those skeletons in your closet. So I'll just let you guys know right now, I absolve you. You are forgiven as far as it comes from J-Rock. But everybody starts somewhere, but that's not where it stays, right? You gotta improve. And here's the thing that people don't often point out when it comes to, sometimes you got to do that when you're starting off. Sometimes you've got to build the social capital. You've got to solve somebody's quick problem so that they trust you. So the next time when they ask you to do it, you can push back and say, all right, we did that. I got you the thing you wanted fast. I don't know if it made as much of a difference as you were hoping. Why don't we try something else this time? So how it should be, I need to look into the research that's already been done. Did they really find the root cause? And was training a gut reaction, just knee-jerk response, or was it actually a learning problem? Like, what did somebody not get trained correctly? Because if it wasn't a learning problem, if it was something systems related or something like that, training is just going to waste everybody's time, right? So if I'm not convinced that their root cause was good enough, I need to do a needs assessment. I need to do an analysis of the data that comes out of that and determine, is training the solution? And then I follow the ADDIE model to train to the employee's individual learning styles.
Fantastic. Sorry, I was getting lost in the comments there. People have started interacting in the comments, which is fantastic. Hello, everyone.
Yeah, I
Thanks for
snuck
getting
some
involved.
stuff past you while you were reading the comments. I can't believe you guys didn't call me on my BS.
Oh, it was coming. I think it just registered a moment too late. So,
All right.
talk to us about these learning styles, J-Rock.
I'm a learning stylist. I think, however,
Okay.
people prefers what I should. No, I'm just kidding. I was trying to hit some hot button issues to be a little controversial, so you guys wake up for this compliance training. ADDIE is not a model; it's a framework. And learning styles are BS. And I'm sorry if you're just hearing that for the first time. I'm glad that I get to be the one to tell you and make you feel bad. I don't want any of these nice people to have to be that, but learning styles is made up BS and it doesn't work, and you should stop saying it.
I think it's something that's been said a lot about in our industry, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's an interesting conversation to bring it up in, specifically because compliance training in L&D teams that I tend to work with is so often given to the newest member of the team, is given to the more junior groups of L&D professionals who are far more likely to be told, do it this way and this is why, and go, okay, I'm new to the role, let's go. That's certainly what happened to me, both in terms of how I approach compliance training and, funnily enough, for learning styles. I joined a team and they went, this is the way. And I went, okay, everyone here's got years of experience, time for me to learn from them. And a year or so later realized, oh God, what have I done? So that's,
right.
I think it's a useful conversation to bring that up in. Fantastic.
Well, I do think it's the thing. Let me get your opinions, both of you. Why do you think compliance training is so awkward and hard to make? Like, what is the root problem as to why this is such a thorny topic?
Kara, do you want to dive in?
Sure. I think that one of the main reasons is so often compliance is rooted in some kind of a legal standard. So, like what you mentioned about the standards that you're held accountable to, J-Rock, I think that, they're kind of rooted in that. And I also think that people assume that it's just some magic pill that's going to fix everything around whatever topic it ends up being. So, with my process, when I get a compliance request in, internally and externally, depending on what my role is at the thing, it's almost like I flip it. And if they're coming to me saying, hey, can you make this training? I basically ask them to prove to me it's a problem. So instead of saying, is training the answer? Like, no, I sell me on it. And I probably, as an external consultant, lost a lot of business that way. I had a lot of requests from people saying, oh, can you make a training on this, or can you make a training on that? And after talking to them, they didn't have any clarity. And I said, I don't think I'm your person. Like, I would not feel comfortable in my heart taking your money and wasting the time and resources of your folks to go through this. And I turned business down that way. But internally, when I'm internally facing, I think it's really important to ask the question. And a lot of times people get a little bit scared of this, so trigger warning here. But I like to ask, okay, if it's such a problem, what have you done about it? And they're like, what? And, I kind of make it a little tongue in cheek. I'm like, I'm very flattered that you think I have some kind of cape or superpower behind me that's going to fix everything if I put this training out there. Like, nothing that actually has performance results is a one and done learning experience. It has to be a partnership through multiple layers of the business, from, making sure that the content's right, from making sure that people are held accountable, that there are performance standards. That is not just on our shoulders, nor should it be. I think so often people fall into the trap of compliance because they are flattered that our business wants them. I love what you said, J-Rock, about, I report to chemists. I have a job because of that. It is very flattering and ego boosting that people need us that bad, but we cannot do it alone. And I think that's why a lot of compliance fails.
Yeah. Rock on, Kara. How about you, Tom? What did you think about that?
I think the biggest thing is the history of this. The history of compliance training is the history of 15 to 30-minute e-learning modules that people are beaten over the head with every 12 months. And then we go, good news, they're 85+% compliant. And then when there's a data breach, everyone goes, how did it happen? But they passed the quiz. It's impossible. It's kind of like the ultimate. Yeah, exactly. Quick, do the quiz again. If they just keep getting 85% in the quiz, they will get better at handling people's data or not falling off ladders or spotting asbestos or whatever. But it's because fundamentally it's kind of like the prime example of training content. We're not actually training people to do a job. We're just training them to know know in theory for a very short period of time, huge quantities of content they don't need to know. It's sort of that amalgamation of every major sin we sort of commit as an industry. We do content first. We hit everyone with the same thing. We just keep repeating the same thing because if we keep doing the same thing, they'll eventually get better.
Yeah.
And there are people not doing that. But we've had so many years of doing it the wrong way in most organizations that has become the embedded expectation. And any deviation from that is now classed as risky. Yeah. Because we've aligned this terrible set of practices with that's what compliance training is. If you do that, it's the classic no one gets fired for buying IBM. That has become the 15 to 30-minute e-learning module for GDPR or data protection or whatever. I've got a very strong feeling that actually the organizations that are doing a good job here, their process is the same as any other bit of performance-related training. They don't sort of separate compliance off. It may go to a dedicated person, but their process looks very similar to needs analysis and design criteria and all these kinds of things that we would otherwise do. But with compliance, we just tend to go, okay, send me the deck or send me the legislation and I'll start working that up into some kind of content.
They have like this big word risk, this risk word flashing in their head. And they're like, we need something fast. We're out of compliance. We need to get there as quick as possible. And if you try to do something that seems risky to solve it, they hate that too. Like they want it to be plain and normal, and they don't want it to and so it's a self-reinforcing behavior.
Yeah, it's a problem. Like that's why a lot of it kind of rolls down to us. It ends up being a problem on someone else's desk. Someone has said, "Hey, this is a problem, you fix it," and then they just like it's an assembly line. They toss it to us like, "Hey, figure it out." Like, no, like if this is truly the problem that you all think that it is, you all have to be involved, or it's not going to help anything.
Have you? This is a deep cut. Did you? How up are you guys on independent films of science fiction in the 1990s? Are we building the cube? Are we building the cube? Everyone just does their part and nobody asks, should we build a cube and put people in it? It's almost Halloween. If you guys want to watch a scary movie, watch The Cube. It holds up. Don't build the cube.
So all of that kind of leads us to one of the things that I've been thinking a lot about compliance training recently. And that is the inevitable build or buy discussion. Can we just buy in our compliance training? Or should everything be built from scratch? Or is there some kind of sort of mix? And similarly, I'll kind of merge some questions together here and we'll have a bit of a discussion. Often when we start in an organization, if they're going to buy a library of content, they've done and bought it. You were not involved in that conversation. You've got the incredible 1,000 e-learning multi-pack of Doom that was, an obscene amount of money and will continue being an obscene amount of money for the near future. But everything's in there that you could ever possibly want to train, but it doesn't seem to work. So how do you navigate those kinds of discussions around building or buying, and how do you use off-the-shelf content that you've already got in the business? Kara, do you want to kick us off on this one?
Yeah, so I don't know if you've all had a chance to read Julie Dirkson's newest book. If you haven't, you highly recommend it. It's phenomenal. I want to say it's Designing for Behavior Change. Talk to the Elephant, I think is what it's called. Anyway, in that book, she makes a case for transitioning from what's in it for me, which has kind of been the standard of how we're guiding, creating learning experiences, to what can I do with that? And I think that is a core reason why a lot of compliance fails, why a lot of people struggle with that off the shelf or inherited course, Tom, or that beloved. Oh, we recorded that 5 years ago, and it's got a shelf life more stable than products than a Twinkie or something, right? So it's like we're going to use that until we run out of space for it. I think that if you are inheriting something like that, your budget is cut, and let's be real, a lot of orgs budgets are being cut. I've talked to other colleagues of mine, and it's pretty common right now. Maybe you have to do more with less. If you get something and you have to kind of put it out from this, I think a nice way to just level it up a little bit. It's still not going to be perfect, but take that moment of what can I do with this? Contextualize it for that end user. Why should they care? Why is this relative to them? How's it going to help them do their job better? And not to scare anybody, but if you at least put some of that in there from a legal defensibility standpoint, if it gets called out in a court of US law, and unfortunately I have not went all the way there, but I did have a scare earlier in my career around something like that. You can at least say that it was molded a little bit more for the organization and the people. So I think it's dangerous to just take it completely off the shelf. I think it's dangerous to just have the same thing over and over and over again. It needs to have that, okay, so what can I do with this? Why is this important, and how is this impacting me in the role? And it doesn't have to be boring. And I know my friend Jonathan Rock has some good examples of some of his work that he's done with that.
Absolutely. And J-Rock, what about yourself on the question of buying in or building?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a question of budget and time, because I mean, it may be cheaper to access the library that's already built for you, but you're going to have to spend some time curating, and it may not be exactly targeted. So, I'd say first of all, think about who's the audience. One of the problems, well, to answer the question that I asked you guys earlier, one of the problems I think with compliance training is that it's designed for two audiences. It's designed for the regulators that are saying, how are you making sure you're living up to this? At the same time as we're trying to trick people into thinking it's for them as well. Because a lot of it is what Kara calls underwear, right? It's like, just cover your butt training. We're doing it because we have to, not because you need to know this or you'll be good at it. Well, I mean, you need to know this because we have to. And so it's kind of like we have this juggling act of like making sure that it answers those problems and that we can prove we did it, but that it's also not just nails on a chalkboard for the people that are having to take it. And so I'd say if I inherited a big library like that, the first thing I need to do is triage it and say, what is the most important stuff? Like, what's the stuff that someone's going to get hurt, or product's going to get recalled, or, like the most important stuff is where I'd start looking at it. And the next thing is, who's the audience? If it's, because when I have to do an annual GMP refresher, and it's always hard for me because I have certain areas that are having a lot of problems because they're the closest to the product, right? Manufacturing floor, those guys need more. The labs, those guys need more. Office workers, support staff, those trainings would get into stuff that they don't ever see, right? And man, you've been nailing it. I'm telling you guys, you check out his Substack. You talked about an example you said recently was the asbestos training, where really all they need to do is be able to identify what has asbestos containing material and if it's damaged or open. You don't need to go into the biochemical makeup of the fibers and what they do to a human lung, all of that stuff. And why does that kind of compliance training get used is because it's like, well, we don't understand the needs of the audience, and so we think we need to train them on everything. Or do you guys like science fiction? Do you like fantasy? There is a book called The Book of Nights by Yves Maynard, and there's just an awesome quote in it that just stuck in my mind. The main character is a little boy who wants to be a knight, and so he goes to train with like this guy who's legendary at training knights, and he's like there with him for years, and he keeps asking him questions and questions. At one point, the guy says, if I teach you any more about this, you won't be a knight, you'll be a scholar. You need to go out and do it. Right. And so that should be our focus. We're not trying to make ourselves an expert and then punish everyone for our research. We're trying to say, what is the behavior that they need to do? And how do I get them there so that they won't lose their job, hurt somebody, hurt an animal, hurt one of their owners, that kind of thing. So, so I'd say the off the shelf versus the bespoke. The smaller your audience and the more important what they're doing, that's when you should have time and money for doing something custom. And the stuff that's just kind of like general knowledge to blast out to the whole organization, chances are that's safer to get the off the shelf because those guys don't know the particulars of your small audiences, but they probably will cover the things that everybody should know. So, yeah.
I really like that. I think my only thing I would add is that is just on a practical note. If you have got a lot of off the shelf content, getting rid of it is usually not an option. Businesses have spent a lot of money on it. Bookending can really help you with this by viewing your off the shelf library as components of a bigger whole. Whether that means putting all your company specifics ahead or behind it, or using it as a primer for your localized or kind of specific training. It can still have value. But even then, any good off-the-shelf provider should offer some kind of contextualization service where you can have your company's language or your company's approach included in the training. If you're looking at buying something off the shelf and they don't offer that, my personal suggestion might be to keep looking. Because they are going to sell you a product and run rather than offering you a partnership that actually helps you deliver value. But that's not universal advice.
Make sure you get the .story file as part of the contract.
Yeah, but basically, yeah. It's so with all of that in mind, then let's talk about, after all of this stuff, everything we're doing wrong, all this off-the-shelf stuff we might be inheriting. I'm lucky. I've got a clean slate. I have been asked to do the first compliance training for this company. At the minute, it's a Wild West. There's no compliance going on. What does really great compliance training look like? J-Rock, do you want to kick us off on that very small, easy to answer question?
Wow. Okay, so most of the stuff that I do, like every year I have to do refresher, which lets me off the hook. But if it's brand new, you've got to take that more seriously, right? Like, so first blush, great compliance training. I'd say like I was talking about, you need to know what are the risks, what does the business care about? Like, because nobody gets compliance training because the people are demanding it, right? Like the business is terrified of something, like they don't want to get sued, they don't want to get their license to manufacture pulled or something like that. So, to me, I would start with your regulations. For me, I'm going to FDA.gov and I'm pulling up the 21 CFR Part 211 and I'm like looking, and they don't often tell you how. They just say, here's what you need to make sure of. And then you look at the SOPs, which is another document, by the way, that has more than one audience. An SOP is a promise. You have to follow them word for word, right? How does my company answer these kind of things? But and I think we've been talking about this the whole time, is you really have to drill down to the person that needs the training. What do they need to do in order to be compliant? And this kind of goes back to Kathy Moore and Map It, right? Like focus first on what they need to do and how you can make that easier for them. And then you don't focus on what they need to know until you understand what do they need to know and when do they need to know it. And, with YouTube, how people learn a lot, and like now with AI, I think there's I know this is probably a later question when you talk about trends and stuff, but I think there is less of a need for people to consume all the information and then hold everything in working memory. That's just, you can check a box and said, I said it, they should have remembered it. But I don't know what it's like for you guys, but where I work, there's some folk that have just tons of curricula on them. So I think good compliance training will be punchy, it will be emotional, and it will have a hook up front, right? Maybe this is a good time for me to share how I do it in my new employee orientation. Let me go ahead and share my screen. And I will find the
That's
window
right, everyone.
that I'm
There's a
going for.
live
So
sharing
this is
opportunity.
so as soon as they throw it up here in the main screen, I'll show you. This is a PowerPoint I use in my new employee orientation, and I'm talking about the history of good manufacturing practices, and I see it as my chance to start with why and set the table, because I feel like a lot of compliance training, if you don't connect them emotionally to why we're doing it, it can feel like a dusty book of rules that doesn't really apply to me. And that's why our brains just tune it out, right? So I start with this slide. You just see women in distress wearing a hat. It has a date, and I don't say a stinking word. I just ask, does anybody know what happened on this date? And I just let them sit with it for a while, right? And then I hit my next slide. Full bleed, a little bit of text, 21 ponies dead. And I tell the story about the Lechuza Caracas Venezuelan team. It was the United States Polo Open. This team got 21 ponies. As they came off the trailers to get ready to compete, they all started collapsing, having trouble breathing, and they all died, one after the other after the other. And I point out what happened. The United States was privileged to host the Polo Open that year. There was a drug that the Venezuelan team was used to giving their ponies to help them recover after a match called Biodil, which was widely available around the world, but had not yet been approved for use in the United States. And so they weren't allowed to bring it in with them. So they went to a nearby compounding pharmacy. Do you guys know what that is? Basically, they have all of the active ingredients to make a batch of whatever. So you can bring in your recipe form and they can make a small batch just for you, just for your needs. That's the niche they fill. They weren't held to the same standards that we are as far as the good manufacturing practices, and the tech mixed the wrong amount of selenium in. He was supposed to mix in 0.5 milligrams, and he mixed in 5. And 3.3 is fatal to horses. So 21 animals got dosed with a fatal dose, and you can't see the cost of it on that man's face because he's covering it with his hands. But you can see it on this lady's face. This is Ginny Powell of the Palm Beach Equine Clinic, and I guarantee that she did not get into veterinary medicine in the hopes of facing a day like this, where all she could do is do what she could for 21 doomed animals over and over again to ease their passing. Right? So, I'm going to stop sharing now. I know that I just bummed everybody out, and hopefully we didn't lose you, but the point is, I use full bleed emotional images. I tell a story, and then you understand why do we sweat the small stuff. Because, yeah, there's scary stuff, scary reasons for compliance, right? Oh, the company could get fined. Our leaders could go to jail. We could lose revenue. There could be recalls, all of that stuff. But until you punch them in the gut and say you do not personally want to be responsible for making animals and humans suffer, I feel like once you set the table like that, that can make it easier to click through the 21 slides or read through the stack of SOPs or something like that. You connect them with a purpose and you give them. So I feel like I might have gone a little bit as your initial question. So
that's quite all right. I think it's a really good example of when we say about the why. Why does it matter? What's in it for them. This is a really great example of the fact of it doesn't have to be a big stretch with compliance training to go, how do you make people care about compliance training? Most people are not okay with that situation. And yes, that's something else. Most people aren't okay with their grandparents being fished out of all their savings. Most people want to go home to their friends, family, pets at the end of the day. But I think often there is a fear about leaning into this, right? There's a, what if I upset someone? What if I create unnecessary stress? So it's an art form. And I'm sure you went through a period of balance, when do you deploy this? Probably not people going, should I consider a career in? That's the wrong time to go, but what about this? But if they're in it, it's important, if they're holding that kind of potential in their job role, they will need to consider the fact that this is a potential outcome, especially how often does someone mix that particular drug? It's probably not every day. It might not happen for 6 months, but that is going to make damn sure that when it does happen, it's that is going to spring to their mind and go, this is important, pay attention. Extreme example, as you say, but the same is true for, you mentioned like asbestos training. How often does anyone in 2025 go, oh, that might be asbestos in the building? It's very, very rare. But when it does happen, there's real danger to life. So it has to be drawn back immediately. There has to be that emotive hook. Kara, do you want to jump in on this one?
Well, not to beat a dead horse. Sorry, I had to go there. You left it open. But if I had a clean slate, no compliance, no expectations, I think I would change what it looks like. And I think Nathalie put that in our comments as well. I don't know why we expect, especially if it's time bound. And I know that there are some compliance things that are time bound, that you report back to an agency that people had X amount of hours of whatever the topic is. Why is it always a one and done? Like, why is it always a one and done? So if we have a ability and it's so important, why are we not giving them little doses throughout the year, right? And continuing to build upon that. And like J-Rock mentioned earlier, I think there's multiple ways to do that, especially with AI. I mean, maybe some of your orgs have some AI coaching softwares, or maybe there's other things out there, but it does not have to be a 1 hour, 2 hour course where that time is ticking down on the learning management system bar, and you feel like a hostage, right? You're like, gosh, I'm stuck here for another 30 minutes. What am I going to do? You're not paying attention at that point. You're honed in on the clock, and you're not really there, especially if you kind of rush through to the end. So in a previous org, I had to build out basically interview training. We had a huge hiring boom, and we had a lot of people that were interviewing for the first time. And what we found was, as they were interviewing and we had job fairs for folks to join us, if they just kind of liked the person and they were passing the vibe check, they were bringing them in. And so then what happened was, people came in for a week or two, and then they pieced out after they got their check. And so in order to kind of build a compliance training around good interviewing practices, build out a little calibration exercise where I used AI avatars for this, to answer questions. So like our structured interview questions, giving responses, and then sending it out and having them calibrate on the rubric of how we rate interview questions. That was extremely eye-opening. And one of the things that was kind of humorous on the side was, one of the AI avatars was very Midwestern, so to speak, and somebody actually thought that they recognized him from another plant. They're like, "Oh, is that? I wonder what happened to that person." So that was kind of a funny little aside there. But I think that we could have went down the path of making them all be in a room for 1 hour, going through it, that one and done. But because we had these little compliance exercises, the calibration monthly, to keep that skill sharp, it was way more effective than just the one and done.
Absolutely. And I think building, if we're going to argue that compliance is actually about helping people do their job right, because right does mean safe, legal, within all the boundaries that we set in SOPs. If we're going to argue that that's what compliance training is, then it can't just be one and done, right? We know that doesn't work in any other area. So why would it work in this one that is so important?
Yeah.
It has to be embedded across everything people do. I guess on that note, modality becomes a big part of that question, right? Because how we deliver this really matters. And I kind of mentioned before that so often compliance defaults to the 15 to 30 minute piece of e-learning that's just churned out. To be clear, there is nothing inherently wrong with e-learning. It can be fantastic if it's the right modality for that audience and that approach. But from the two of yourselves, what are the more interesting or maybe unexpected modalities that you've used effectively? Kara, do you want to kick us off on this one?
Yeah, so my org is currently 5 days return to office, and so we've been trying to pivot our strategy around what learning experiences look like. And so one thing that we've been doing that I think is really cool is we're building kind of these communities of practice throughout different job families and things of that nature. And what's great about that is a lot of times the communities kind of help run it, and then they're using us as a partner to say, okay, we're going to have this meetup, or we're going to have this unconference, and whatever that looks like. What are some things that you all can provide us? That's been awesome, and it's been really great to work with different geographic hubs of these folks that we provide training for, just through that. Previously, even doing things outside of the organization. So, other places I've been before it became a hot mess, we used to use Twitter hashtags for different things, and then you're getting even kind of a more worldly perspective of some topics. I do know that that obviously doesn't work for every organization and every topic, but just having things a little bit more social, I think, is really, really powerful around it, giving people an opportunity to kind of think about it, chat about it, and expand upon it. Because a lot of times, the best nugget you're going to get around this is how a peer approaches it, and how they contextualize it and how it's operationalized
Mm.
for them. And you will not get that in a traditional, e-learning, so to speak. So maybe there's other ways to kind of tease that out through a community and practice. And like I said, that it's been really fun to be a part of that.
Amazing. And J-Rock, what about yourself? Oh, there might be a delay.
Yeah, so hopefully I'm not having connection issues. Let me know if I like freeze. Like usually I freeze in like a silly face, and then they take a screenshot
Oh,
of my frozen face and then put it online. I the problem. I'm going to speak slowly so that it hopefully comes through. I think the problem with compliance training is that it's predictable and it's boring, and your brain, which is usually putting as much as it can in the background so that you can like survive, find food and a mate. How do we activate that for the stuff that's important? So I like to surprise people. I mean, you saw the example with the emotions. Um, One of the best changes you can make to make it, let's just keep it in the bounds of e-learning. I know there's way better stuff to do. Um, Start with the e-learning example. Let's say you did inherit a bunch, but you can edit it. Look at the language. My goodness, the language is often so elevated in compliance training because of that risk, and everyone wants to seem like an expert. And I feel like the official compliance language, the polysyllabic jargon. Did you guys ever see the movie Bambi? Remember when the little baby Bambi's out there on the ice with the rabbit, and he's just that's what the language does. Is it just it's stilted, it's awkward, it slides along the surface of the mind, failing to punch through into any kind of deeper consciousness. You want to have stuff that has hooks in it if it's important enough to remember. Because remember, the job is we got to put the information in such a way that they can easily pull it back out again. I know Lauren Waldman in the chat knows what I'm talking about with this. So I like to do the unexpected to make it stand out. I like to kill the player character I give them a tough quiz, and if they can't guess it right, I kick them back to the beginning of that section. And man, they hate it. They really hate that because it used to be, it used to be the fastest way through. The most efficient path is just to click the next button like you're doing a simulator, and then just guess your way through all the easy questions. Like that's a bribe. I wouldn't take it. I would report that. I didn't even read this question, but one of the answers is a paragraph and the rest are 5 words. That's the right answer. Oh, if there's none of the above, that's the option. They go through and because they just want to get it done with as quick as possible. And so like I will make a quiz that's a monster fight and have the monster kill the player, and then they got to go back to the beginning of that section. And now the most efficient path through is you got to pay attention to pass my quiz, sucker. So if it's important enough, you can do that kind of stuff to make it stand out. Just remember, whatever you quiz for gets outsized emphasis. So when you're making your quiz questions, make sure it's the stuff you want them to walk away remembering.
Fantastic.
There was one more thing I wanted to say, though. So that's, if you're stuck in e-learning, do stuff to make it fun. Make the language punchier and shorter. Don't try to seem like an expert. Try to seem like a wild card, so that their brain wakes up and goes, "What the heck is this thing I'm taking?" Make them laugh, make them cry, make it important. But I really like, and again, I keep glazing you on these Substack articles, but they've been killer lately. The idea of a slow drip feed over time, instead of, as Kara said, it's not a one-time learning. You hit them with the compliance training, and then maybe they get an email or a Teams message or something that calls back to it. Think about the stuff that you can't help doing right now. Like on LinkedIn, that little stupid game where you're like connecting the numbers. I always take it. I always feel like such a dunce, because it's like, oh, you solved it in 50 seconds. The average was 30. I'm like, oh. I must be dim, but I play it every single time and it's fun. How can we do something like that with just maybe one little important fact? You don't got to retrain them on everything, but like throughout the year, just little fun things that they can interact with and remind them, that doesn't get lost in the signal to noise, right?
Absolutely. And I think just to add one other thing into that, wherever possible, in the last couple of years, I've taken to trying to make physical things that relate to compliance. Something that lifts it out off the screen or out of the SOP guidebook or whatever, or out of the training session, and gives them something they could put on the wall, hold, put on the desk, but that is useful. We're not talking about a stress ball saying, remember GDPR. That's that kind of nonsense just makes people feel good. I'm talking about, I did some work with like a gas transportation company.
Yes.
Now, there was lots about what if there's a gas leak? Well, gas engineers need a very specific set of training about that. Yeah. But if I work in administration doing accounts for this gas company, all I need to know is, what does gas smell like? Where's the nearest exit? Who do I call? That's it.
Yeah.
So we put that on a little bank card type thing that they could put in their wallet or in their pocket, so that if they couldn't remember that smells like gas, what does gas smell like? Well, during their onboarding training, everyone got to smell some gas. Woohoo, I guess. But then more importantly on the card, it would almost like tasting notes, like you get for wine. It would be, do you smell the following things? Because the smell of natural gas is obviously nothing, so we create it artificially. So we can describe it quite nicely. And on the other side, do these things now. Because the chances of a gas leak, hopefully, never. They are not going to use this on a day-to-day basis. But when they do now, bam, they know exactly where that information is if they can't remember it. Make being compliant easy in the time when it matters most is the whole idea.
Yeah, I love that.
I'm aware. Oh, yeah. So we're coming up on our last 10 minutes. Hopefully Kara comes back in a minute. She's actually joining us from the Adobe conference in Vegas. Hey, there we go. So our last question, I guess, as a group to dive into, and then hopefully we'll have some time to offer up sort of some Q&A if we've still got 5 minutes. Looking ahead, trends, changes in the workplace, changes in technology. If we were starting today to think about what compliance looks like in 2026, let's say in our organizations, where would you be looking? J-Rock, do you want to start us on this one?
Yeah, sure. I'm still coming to terms with what AI is doing to learning and to how the next group of learners are going to function. And I think we're moving away from tell them everything up front and then hope they just remember everything they need to. That's why I really liked that gas card. Because not only does it give them an artifact that they can look at, and even if they don't have it with them when they actually have a thing, they've built that muscle memory up. And I want everyone to just imagine the smell of Crayola crayons, right? Smell is powerful as far as emotions that trigger, your childhood, that kind of thing. So that's good. But I think the learners of the future are going to be more and more used to not just remembering everything, but knowing how to get it quickly. So anything that we can create that isn't like a static thing. It's not a static chart like a thing I'm going to show on a PowerPoint. It's not a static document, but it's going to be like an artifact that they can check that's constantly being updated and in real time, right? Right now, I do we do our I do the training percent complete for the site, and I'm just showing them last month's. I'm showing them last month's chart. It's like, how do I get to the point where I'm pulling that in real time at all times? And so how can we, and it's got to be, it's got to be mobile. It's got to be portable. But that's the kind of stuff I'm thinking about is how do we make sure we catch it when something's about to go wrong and give them what they need in the moment. Where I work, they got one of those robot dogs. I don't know if you guys have seen these things. They got the little tennis ball feet. And it's got a bank of sensors on its back, and at different points throughout the day, it will walk the lines, and it's looking for gas leaks. It's looking for, it's checking to make sure that the timing belts are doing right, and it'll stop and it'll like tap its foot twice when it notices a problem, and send an email to maintenance. So, I think the more that we can address how the mind is going to work. How are the students going to look in just a few years? I don't have the answer for that, but that's what we need to be thinking about when it comes to this.
Great thing to focus on. And Kara, what about your thoughts?
Sorry, I'm falling apart over here, but I got a few more minutes left in me, and a coughing fit, and then my earbud fell out. But I'm still here, I promise. So I'm going to go really bold here. So I think we're getting to a point where it's not just going to be about what J-Rock said about training completions or whatever. I would love to see in my lifetime a culture audit. All right. And so what I mean by that is I firmly believe the culture of any organization is behavior that's tolerated. And I think a lot of times you have compliance issues because you have somebody take a shortcut or turn their back on something or fudge a number, or there are human behavior things that we do. And I'm not saying it needs to go into spooky Big Brother territory or anything like that, but I would love to see some type of I don't know what the cadence would be, but instead of, and I'm going to go back to J-Rock's example of FDA audits. I used to also be in manufacturing. We would get audited. And one of the things they'd be like, show me where your SOPs are. Show me where your training procedures are. I would love to see leadership be accountable of tell me what issues you've had in this and how you handled it as a leader, or how you coached that person, or how you did XYZ. That's where I would love compliance training to go, because that way it's more ironclad, it's more consistent. I'm sick of being the scapegoat, and I'm sure most of you listening to this, you've been blamed for something in your organization. They always like to blame us, but ultimately at the end of the day, it has to be a collective effort across the board. So again, if I have my mark and way, I would love to see that in my lifetime. I'd be really, really proud if that happened.
Fantastic. Well, we've covered a fair amount of ground in today's session. So if you've got any questions, now is the time to throw them into the chat. And whilst, because there's a bit of a delay, whilst you're all throwing your questions in for this panel, I want to tell you a little bit about a survey that has opened up. If we could put that slide up. So Thirst has basically launched its State of L&D for Small and Medium Businesses 2026 survey. It takes just 5 minutes to fill out, and it's all about gathering our collective insights about what the future may look like based on what we're doing right now. So this is a real opportunity to help shape our understanding of what's going on out there right now. If you would like to take part, you will get early access to the report itself, so you can be among the first to learn what we're all up to. And as a bit of a thank you, you'll be entered into a prize draw for VIP tickets at Manchester's Co-op Live to see, and I shall read the list because I am that well informed about today's musical trends, Florence and or the Machine, James Arthur, and the gorillas. I did, just to how out of touch I am. Apparently, the gorillas were big quite a while ago. I had to Google this to discover that. I had no idea who the other two were. However, I am reliably informed they're all phenomenal. I'm just wildly out of touch. So if you want to help shape the conversation around L&D, please do take the time. The link is going out in the chat right now to fill out the survey. Everyone's insights hold value. I've always thought this. So often these surveys are only filled out by super senior leaders or very experienced practitioners, whether it's your first day working in the industry or whether you've been here for 20 years or whether you're approaching the end of your career. We all have valuable insights that no one else on the planet has experienced. These surveys are an opportunity to share that and make sure that that contributes to our holistic understanding of the space. So link in the comments, please do fill out the survey and let's see if we've got any questions. No, I think clearly my picture filling out the survey was so riveting, or people were just marveling at my lack of connection to the popular culture of the last seemingly 20 to 25 years. In which case, let me just ask in 1 minute or less. We'll start with you, Kara. 1 minute or less. What's your top piece of advice for creating great compliance training for those who are here with us today?
Remember the human. There is a human at the other end of whatever you are creating. So be concise and make sure that whatever you are providing adds value. You're not adding confusion. You're not adding frustration, but you are giving them what they need when they need it and explaining why they need it.
Fantastic. J-Rock, you can follow that one up.
Okay, two things. First of all, along the lines of remember the human, remember your audience. The worst compliance training I've ever taken is where they're like, let's just do one big event and everyone will come and then we'll just record the WebEx for anyone that comes later. And then they don't think about the new employees you'll have down the road. And then you log in and it's required training and everybody in the video is still wearing a mask because it's still COVID days. And your brain just goes, this ain't for me. I'm switching off now. You can sit through this, but I'm thinking about flying robots or whatever. So think about the people beyond just your immediate audience. And that goes for time bound, but also accessibility. You may think, well, I know everybody in my audience and we don't need to worry about, captions or tab order or things like that. And the fact is, first of all, you don't really know who's in your audience right now, but you don't know, even if you did, it's not their job to tell you if something changes, right? If they have carpal tunnel surgery and can't use a mouse, or if something happens with their vision or hearing, it's not their job to keep you informed. So as Nick Tillum says, accessibility is not extra steps, it's steps we missed. So keep in mind anybody that you might hire down the road when you're making this stuff. And it will be accessible and it will be enjoyable or at least tolerable. I mean, it is compliance training for people beyond just your initial gut reaction. And the second thing that I want to say is if you still are perpetuating the neuro myth of learning styles, it is your fault those 21 ponies died.
Okay, well, moving swiftly on from that statement, thank you all for attending today's session. Hopefully, you leave this session. The most important thing to me, if I'm honest, is that we see, or that you now see, I should say, compliance training as an opportunity. These should be the things that we are most proud of. They are a golden opportunity at a time when organizations are pressing us more and more to show value. And when our jobs may be on the line at the end of that value conversation, compliance training is a well-funded, universally recognized in terms of need, opportunity for us to demonstrate that value and leave no question as to what we bring to the organization. If you do have more questions about compliance training, reach out. We would love to talk to you more about it on LinkedIn or by email, or you can send a letter in the post. Won't send you a Blue Peter badge, but something similar maybe, who knows, maybe a gas card. Thank you all for attending. We'll be back next month. Next month's session is actually looking at podcasting as a learning modality. So that will be super exciting. Keep your eyes out on LinkedIn and we will see you then.